Have you ever looked up at the sky and wondered about the stories we tell ourselves, stories of good and evil, of angels and demons? For millennia, these tales have shaped human civilization. They give us comfort, they give us rules to live by. But where do these epic stories come from? Are they unique revelations, delivered once to a chosen few? Or are they echoes, faint whispers carried across deserts and oceans, from civilizations long since turned to dust? The stories of the Old Testament, for instance, are filled with powerful beings, archangels like Michael and Gabriel, but their descriptions, their very essence, did not spring from a vacuum. They carry the imprint of far older traditions. Long before these tales were written, the ancient Near East was a tapestry of powerful empires. The Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, each had its own pantheon, its own vision of the cosmos. And when you look at their art, a striking pattern emerges. They carved magnificent winged figures into stone. Beings like the Lamassu, a protective deity with the body of a bull, the wings of an eagle, and the head of a human. These weren't angels as we know them, but they were supernatural guardians. They stood at the gates of cities and palaces, celestial sentinels bridging the gap between the mortal and the divine. This imagery of power, of a being that could traverse both earth and sky, became a powerful symbol that would endure for ages. This concept of winged divinity wasn't confined to Mesopotamia. Travel west across the Mediterranean to ancient Greece. There you will find Nike, the goddess of victory. She is almost always depicted with magnificent wings. The famous statue, the Winged Victory of Samothrace, captures her in a moment of triumph, her wings spread wide. She wasn't just a messenger, she was the very embodiment of success, a divine force that could grant favor in battle. The wings signified her swiftness, her ability to descend from the heavens to crown a victor. This powerful visual language, a shorthand for divine power and mobility, was part of the cultural air that everyone in the ancient world breathed. So when the writers of the Old Testament sought to describe the messengers of their God, what imagery did they draw upon? They reached for these familiar, powerful symbols. The wings that had once belonged to Babylonian guardians and Greek gods were now given to the archangels. It was a way of communicating their nature. These beings were swift, they were powerful. They could move between the earthly and the heavenly realms. The angel was not a sudden invention but an evolution of an idea. A powerful concept, reimagined and repurposed to fit a new understanding of the universe. Proving that even our most sacred ideas are part of a much longer, interconnected human story. The line between a god and a demon is often thinner than we think. Sometimes it's simply a matter of perspective. Who was telling the story? Look to the ancient lands of India and Persia. Two great cultures flourished, sharing a common ancestry. For a time they also shared their gods. But as their paths diverged, something fascinating happened. Their gods became each other's demons. In the early Hindu texts, the Vedas, the Devas are radiant, benevolent gods. The Asuras are their adversaries, power-seeking and often demonic. But in the ancient Persian religion of Zoroastrianism, the roles are completely reversed. The term Ahura is their word for a god. In Zoroastrianism, the supreme creator is Ahura Mazda, the Lord of Wisdom. The Ahuras are divine spiritual beings akin to angels. And who are their enemies, beings they call Devas? Sound familiar? It's the same linguistic root as the Hindu Devas. One culture's gods became the other's devils. This wasn't necessarily born of pure malice. It was a way for each culture to define itself, to draw a clear line between us and them. By turning their neighbors' gods into figures of evil, they reinforced the righteousness of their own faith. It's a pattern we see repeated throughout human history, where spiritual identity is forged in opposition to others. This ancient dynamic offers a profound insight into how our concepts of angels and demons were formed. The Persian idea of the noble Ahuras serving the one great god provided a powerful template. It's not hard to see how this concept influenced the development of angels in Abrahamic faiths. They are divine servants of a single creator, locked in a cosmic struggle against forces of darkness. On the other hand, the fierce, powerful, and sometimes fearsome female deities of India, the Devis, may have contributed to the idea of powerful, non-angelic spirits, beings of immense power that exist outside the simple binary of good and evil, later to be categorized and in some cases, demonized. This process of demonization became a key tool for the Abrahamic religions as they sought to establish their own unique identity. The gods and goddesses of their neighbors were not just ignored, they were actively recast as forces of evil. The powerful Canaanite goddess Ashtoreth, once worshipped as a queen of heaven and a symbol of fertility, was transformed in the Bible into a demonic figure associated with idolatry. Baal, a prominent weather and fertility god in the region, was reduced to a false idol, an enemy of God. Even the sophisticated pantheon of Egypt with its animal-headed gods was dismissed as a collection of monstrous demons, their rituals deemed profane abominations. Our myths are filled with stories of a lost golden age, a perfect beginning followed by a great fall. The story of the Garden of Eden is perhaps the most famous, but what if this story is a memory, a cultural memory of a real, catastrophic event, passed down through countless generations? Some scientists and historians now theorize that the Eden narrative could be an echo of ancient floods that dramatically reshaped the world. One theory points to the Persian Gulf. Thousands of years ago it was a fertile river valley, a paradise on Earth for early humans. But as the ice caps melted, the sea level rose, flooding the valley and forcing its inhabitants to flee, carrying with them stories of a lost homeland drowned by water. Other theories point to similar cataclysmic floods. The rupturing of a natural dam, which led to the Mediterranean Sea violently flooding into the Black Sea basin, could have been another such event. Imagine witnessing that, the water rising, swallowing everything you know. Such a terrifying experience would undoubtedly be seared into the collective memory, retold as a story of divine punishment or a paradise lost forever. These are not just stories, they are powerful explanations for a world that has been violently transformed. They are humanity's attempt to make sense of trauma and loss on a geological scale, a narrative that gives meaning to a world that was and the one that is. And it's not just lost gardens. Our myths are also populated by giants and monsters. The biblical Nephilim, or Watchers, were said to be giants who walked the earth in ancient times. In Greece, legends told of the Cyclops, one-eyed giants who forged lightning bolts for Zeus. For centuries these were thought to be pure fantasy. But what if they were an attempt to explain something real? All across the world people have unearthed enormous bones. We now know they belong to mammoths, mastodons and other extinct megafauna. To an ancient farmer, a massive mammoth skull, with its large central nasal cavity, could easily have been mistaken for the skull of a one-eyed giant. This act of reinterpreting the past is a fundamental part of how we build our world. We lose knowledge, and then we create new stories to fill the gaps. The legendary Library of Alexandria was a repository of ancient wisdom, holding scrolls on science, philosophy, and history. Its destruction meant that countless secrets of the ancient world were lost forever. Think of the Tower of Babel. The biblical story tells of humanity trying to build a tower to the heavens, only to be scattered by God. This story was very likely inspired by the great ziggurats of Babylon, massive stepped pyramids that seemed to pierce the clouds. For Hebrew captives in Babylon, these imposing structures would have been symbols of human hubris, perfect inspiration for a cautionary tale. The process of turning a god into a demon is not just an ancient curiosity, it has had lasting and painful consequences. Consider the figures of Lilith and Ashtoreth. In some Jewish folklore, Lilith is not a demon but Adam's first wife, created as his equal. She refused to be subservient and fled Eden, only to be demonized in later traditions as a stealer of babies and a creature of the night. Her story is a powerful example of how female figures who challenge patriarchal authority can be recast as monstrous. Ashtoreth, as we've seen, was once a widely worshipped goddess of fertility and love across the Near East. In the Old Testament, her worship is condemned, and her name becomes synonymous with sin, her identity stripped and replaced with a demonic caricature. This pattern of demonization extends to practices as well. The Old Testament is filled with condemnations of the Canaanites, particularly for the alleged practice of child sacrifice. This created a stark moral dividing line. Yet, the early Israelites themselves practiced animal sacrifice as a central part of their worship. It was a common and accepted ritual throughout the ancient world. The controversy was never about sacrifice itself, but about who was being sacrificed and to which god. This history is complex and often uncomfortable, a reminder that moral lines are frequently drawn to favor one's own group while vilifying the practices of others, even when they share common elements. Today, these ancient stories and conflicts continue to echo with dangerous intensity. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem, a site holy to both Jews and Muslims, remains one of the most contested pieces of real estate on Earth. For some religious groups, rebuilding a third Jewish temple on this site is a necessary step to fulfilling biblical prophecy. This ambition has led to recent alarming developments. There is now a concerted effort by some groups to breed a perfect red heifer, an animal whose ashes are required, according to the Book of Numbers, for the ritual purification of the temple priests. This is not just a historical reenactment, it is a serious theological and political project. The pursuit of this red heifer is sending ripples of tension across the globe. It is seen by many as a direct provocation, an attempt to alter the fragile status quo of a sacred site at the heart of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It shows how profoundly these ancient myths continue to shape our modern world. A story written thousands of years ago about ritual purity can now fuel geopolitical conflict and stoke fears of a wider war. From the winged gods of Babylon to the tensions on the Temple Mount, the stories we tell about our past are never truly past. They are alive, shaping our beliefs, our identities, and our future in ways we are only beginning to understand.